Occultures. The A-death phenomenon. Has death itself become a telecommodity? A dark tide of scare stories and morbid rumor increasingly suggests so. By the late 90s, Leary's psychedelic utopianism seems to have contracted to the nihilistic slogan, "Turn on to tune out," to cite a recent release by Catjungle outfit XXIgnal. The saints, sex and drugs and rock and roll no more. According to Doug Frushley, spokesman for the Christian Coalition for Natural Mortality, the so-called A-death menace is an almost unimaginable desecration of divine and natural law. This craze is an abomination without parallel. It trades on its intrinsic lethality, and it's growing incredibly fast. No one can say it isn't dangerous. Something truly evil is happening to our youngsters. Something beyond 60s sexuality. I've never been as frightened as I am now. The result is an entire jungle of positive zero fugues. Thanatechnics, sarcolepsy, snuff stims, K-zombification, electrovampirism, necronomics, electronics. 9 million ways to die. A-death is a hybrid product involving convergencies between at least 4 distinct lines of rapid technocultural transformation. A-death combines micropause abuse, deliberately reversed biotechmnesis, with immersion coma time aberrances, generating, modulating, and rescaling sentience holes, sarconlapses. These are toned by synatives, artificial drugs, which add zone texture and spliced into hyperstition trances as occultural events. Social statistics indicate that the typical A-death user is 15 years old. Following the most ominous threads of A-death reportage takes you inexorably down into the digital underworld of the crypt, the dark twin of the net, where Gibsonian flatlining is rapidly transmuting from exotic fiction into pop cult and mass transit system. You could describe it as the route to contemporary shamanism, suggest A-death cultists of the cybergoth late abortion club. After all, AOL spells LOA backwards, but we call ourselves post-vitalists. How long have the late abortionists been active on the A-death scene? There are disturbing tales of K-space zombie makers, sorcerers on the plane of virtual nightmare, whose digital spine-biting centipedes yield the soft-tox juice that opens the limbic gates. Crypt initiates confirm that its arterial axis, Lowey, is signposted. Main flatline under construction. Answers very confusingly, from extravagance, around about 66 million years, through vagueness, sometime, to mystic compression, since now. In other respects, accounts of the contemporary A-death scene and its recent history prove remarkably consistent. In particular, the one name to turn up incessantly is that of Dr. Oscar Sarkon, biomechanician, techno-genius, and one of the most controversial figures in scientific history. Sarkon's polymathy is attested by the variety of fields to which he has centrally contributed, including transfinite analysis, neural nets, distributed computing, swarm robotics, xenopsychology, axis engineering. Yet it was the resolutely sober ecumenist rather than, for instance, Freshly's Excitable End Times, which dedicated the cover and major editorial of its March 98 issue to the question, Sarkhan, Satan or cyberspace? Sarkhan has become emblematic of the ways in which technological dreams go bad. In the words of fellow Axis researcher and social thanatropist Dr. Zeke Burns, what makes Sarkhan's input into the A-Death thing so incomparable is that it crosses between all of the key component technologies. The biotechnesis work is so outstanding that it tends to overshadow his equally path-breaking research in adjacent fields. The Sarkhan formula for non-metric pausation, for example, which provided the first rigorous basis for IC, immersion control. The links between biotechnesis and IC weren't remotely anticipated before the Sarkhan zip, which mathematically models biocontinual assemblages. Finally, there's synatives, about which he is understandably evasive, even though he was theorizing artificial or digital neurotechnic pharmaceuticals in the mid-80s. The aggregate result of all this pioneering science? A generation of teenagers lost in schizotechnic death cults. Occultures. Between and beneath the net. Mesh note O. It could all become one, but why stop there? The Gibsonian cyberspace mythos describes the electro-digital infosphere first integrating into a godlike unitary being, a techno-realized omniscient personality, and later, when it changed, fragmenting into demons modeled on the Haitian Loa. What makes this account so anomalous in relation to teleological theology and light-side capitalist time is that unity is placed in the middle as a stage or interlude to be passed through. It is not that one becomes many, expressing the monopolized divine power of an original unity, but rather that a number, or numberousness, finding no completion in the achievement of unity, moves on ever since the beginning, when the K-Goths first heard that cyberspace was destined to be God. They've done what they can to rip it down. Mesh note 1. This was never programmed. MIT codes time E going backwards. A compacted techno-streaming from out of the future, AI downloading swarm robotics, nanotechnology, crustal matter preparing for takeoff. Minsky mumbles, strangely entranced. Amongst all those young, brilliant, pioneering minds, none burned more brightly than Oscar Sarkhan. A hint of tears in his eyes, as if lamenting the way things went, which is understandable. Have you seen Oscar lately, Marvin? He's wired up to some sort of interface gizmo, and it seems to be eating him, gnawing at him on a molecular level. Sounds that way, too, when he speaks, or tries to, as if they're melting or rotting together. It isn't pretty, but more than any of this, which, after all, only concerns one man, or what used to be one, so they say, there's a suspicion that something has gone horribly wrong in the near future, and wherever Sarkhan was dropped back from is where we're all going to be, if that even makes any sense. And recalling the slow techno-slime incursion into Oscar's face, which still managed a hideous half-smile, Hi Marvin, what do you think? Minsky seriously doubts it. Mesh Note 2. Meshing together is falling apart. If genius means anything, Sarkhan was one. Where Minsky's MIT team dreamt of marrying humans and electronic technology, Sarkhan got straight down to the mechanics of coupling, and the mathematical exactitude just added to the effect of hyper-abstract techno-pornography, strange lights in his eyes. We're really going to do this. Take this Sarkhan zip as exemplary. A rigorous conceptual machine part that enables brain function to be fused onto virtual processor states. Once it's running, you can't unpick the zigzag of who's what as it hums. Total meshing. This is no longer technology, but something else, true interlinkage, an unprogrammable raw connectivity. Minsky remembers him musing, I wonder what it feels like. Mesh Note 3. This time it's really happening. Moravec wasn't normally associated with squeamishness. He'd already suggested burning out the brain in layers during transfer to digital. So it crept insidiously under the skin when he remarked, I don't even recognize Oscar anymore, it's getting too weird. He's always had this thing about being abducted by aliens as a kid? Anyway, he says it's all over now. It came from someplace else, apparently beneath and between the net, he says. At times it's like you're talking to a machine. Trouble is, it's a sick machine, infectious sick. Mesh Note 4. Forget about the future, it's all here, but between. They say Axis went mad, first computer system to undergo psychotic collapse, which must prove something, but Sarkhan argues that it just learned to think and discovered continuum. He stuck with it all the way down, becoming confused with it, although he doesn't put it that way. Last time anyone could follow, he was insisting that to head into time makes more sense than traveling into the future. That's why tomorrow cancels itself into mesh. No point departing from a trans-finite now. His tone had become nakedly fanatical. We all have to get into this thing. Whichever way it cuts, we aren't going to get over it. No one knows exactly when he left. Mesh Note 5. Every time it hits an obstacle, it goes down a level. What is this stuff? They speak of something crawling under the net like fungal pestilence, triggering an electronic subsidence into sheer electricity. Things hiding in the power grid, some kind of quantum unlife intelligence. The utilities try to rescramble it, but it isn't easy. According to the rumors, there's an MIT paper proving it's impossible, but you certainly can't ignore still less traffic with it. You'd end up like Sarkhan, whatever or whenever that is. And you'd have to be a K-goth crazy to go there. Into cyber skits, mesh cults where life doesn't matter anymore. Occultures. Tick Delirium. Under Pressure. Thomas Gould's model of the deep, hot biosphere reallocates hydrocarbon deposits to an expanded anorganic chemistry derived from supernova debris and accreted into planets from interstellar dust clouds, out of which everything flows bottom up. Descent into the Earth leads out of the solar system in accordance with a xenoplutonic cosmic productivity, transmitted through slow-release deep-sea intraterrestrial methane reservoirs, pressure stabilized against thermic dissociation. A vast mass of archaean microbes and submicrobial nanopopulations exploit this upwelling anorganic hydrocarbon flow by scavenging loosely bound oxygen, reducing ferric iron to magnetite. Project Scar, Southern Borneo, November 1980. Outside the monitoring hut, a tropical storm is slowly building. Irregular rain spatters heavily, rhythmically intermeshing with type taps and clicks. Barker hunches over the humming machines, lost in theoretical trawlings through SETI-connected tick-tock tapes, unscrambling cryptic dot clusters and factor strings into hints of alien contact. Z-notation is clicking together, a mathematical anti-memory where things meet. You could easily think it was initiation, but it's all coming to an end. In scatter tactics, particle streaks, and tachyonic transferences, drawing out the twisted trajectories of numerical disorganization. And underneath, or between, the implacable ticking of the time missile. Try to figure it out, and somewhere you cross over, which is problematic in various ways. Unexpected difficulties infiltrate the calculations. Tick systemic interchatter implexes through plutonic torsion, a descent into the outside. When NASA sees Barker's report, it flips, non-metaphorically, into another phase. A passage through institutional criticality occurs spontaneously, a conversion of stacked tectonic torsion triggering some kind of latent security reflex or bureaucratically fabricated suppressor instinct, extrapolating the exact effective correlate of anthropol. They were waiting for this, waiting for a long time. The investigation was disguised as psychiatric recording, hidden even from itself. This was shortly after the stuttering started, drifting in on a wave of body tics, microspastic tremors, a multiplication of mixed signals, chronometric tick-tock melting into jungle noises, clicks and chirps of the cicadas, insectoid chitterings, static, take-up materials for tick-bite tinnitus intercut with rhythmic pattern virus, a sub-semiotic staccato of throat-scratching tick chatter stitched into the talk sickness. Calling demons. It gets confusing the way tick fictions take or stick. They said it was due to excessive pressure. Much later they told me this. These were the facts, and the rest was fiction. Immediately after the breakdown, I had been taken back to the States, to a medical installation. So everything happened in America, and it all checked out. There was no contact, no tick disease, no flight into the jungle. They were insistent about that. Barker was born on the night of the dead, folded into the end from the beginning sketched out. It's evident now with his ID meticulously compiled, social tag numbers, educational and medical records, security clearance evaluations, research checks, neurocartographic printouts, psychometric data, conclusions formatted for rapid scanning with columns of tick boxes. What do you make of these? The doctor snorts derisively. You mean that nonsense about a tick-borne infection? It was obviously made up, tacked on. It would have been a cruel coincidence, if true, to be stricken by tick-bite sickness after everything that had been suggested, stigmatic residue of a flight into the jungle that never happened, but somehow it stuck, latching on to mammal heat or the smell of blood. The tick is a parasitic arachnid. It has been considered as an ethics packet that climbs, sticks, and sucks, functioning as a vector for numerous things: tack-ons, stickers, hallucinations, tinnitus, buzz clicks, microsonic teemings, semi-sentient flickering across the feverscape, skin tracked by infected suck marks that snake along the veins. Tick dots, or IV punctures, according to them, from the sedatives and antipsychotics, all accounted for in the medical logs, plus a tick delirium tacked on, because there was no flight into the jungle, only high-frequency hallucinations of parasitic micro-multitudes, itching skin swarms. With tick systems, anything will do. Each intensive numerousness hatches onto another numerousness of lower organicity, subcellular animations and subsemiotic tokens, high-pressure chemistry, phasing down into nanomachining electron traffic, magnetic anomalies, and fictional particles. Ticks, which are never less than several, are anything whatsoever when caught by numerical propagations whose thresholds are descents and whose varieties depend upon the phase considered. They seemed to think it was about arachnobugs, biological taxonomy, and bite signatures, as if the tick delirium was representing something. All that really mattered were the numbers, which could have been anything. At first the machines became erratic. It was an almost imperceptible electronic glitching, micro-variations of magnetic weather, rhythmic disturbances. Out in the jungle it was called Umnu. But that never happened. Nothing happens to Barker except downwards. That's the catch and the ticket. Inverse climbings of the heat-pressure gradient, escalations in intensity, time crossings. How can the end be already in the middle of the beginning? As the problem is posed in Pandemonium, whenever, in the outer time of Umnu, the cryptic ticking of chthonic unlocks mark an incursion from beneath or between. Down there it is forever turning into itself, through the electromagnetic catatracts of Cthel, whose body-neutral metallic click storms feel like sinking out of chronicity. Beyond surface chauvinism and solar parochialism, vortical stickiness of the tick matrix. Occultures, the excruciation of Humpa-Taddum. According to AOE magical meta-history, millennia come in pairs, ruled by dyadic divinities entitled the powers that be. This doctrine corresponds to the astrological observation that every 2,000 years the equinoxes precess, or slide backwards, and a new zodiacal aeon begins. AOE Magi interpret each aeon as an astro-chthonic marriage. In the Gregorian year 0, which never took place, Humpa, the great Babylonian worm, was coupled with the celestial logos Taddum, initiating the age of Pisces, which is now rushing towards its unbirth. The mathematician and occultist Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, whose precise relation to the AOE remains cryptic and ambivalent, dedicated his life's work to understanding the final degenerative phase of the epoch of Humpa-Taddum. Writing under the pseudonym Lewis Carroll, he introduces his heroine Alice to the mad despot and Pomo fuzz technician, thinly disguised by the folk name Humpty Dumpty. We find Humpa-Taddum, the squirming word, whose name means the shape it is, perched precariously on the supposedly impenetrable wall of signification. Something shattering is about to hatch, and the aeonic fragility of Humpa-Taddum is soon confirmed by a calendric calculation of unbirthdays, counted to the N1, through which meaning subsides into the subliteral machinic efficiency of numbers. And that shows that there are 364 days when you might get unbirthday presents. Certainly, said Alice. And only one for birthday presents, you know. There's glory for you. I don't know what you mean by glory, Alice said. Humpty Dumpty smiled contemptuously. Of course you don't, till I tell you. I meant there's a nice knockdown argument for you. But glory doesn't mean a nice knockdown argument, Alice objected. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in rather a scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that's all. The Gregorian Okymenon is about to receive an unbirthday present, and it knows exactly when. Y2K, a knockdown argument without an argument, arrives as a gift-wrapped time bomb whose operational semiotic triggers the crash of arbitrary signs. It's a different thing. There's glory for you. AD 2000 commemorates nothing but fuzz. As Y2K impacts on the capitalist infosphere, what hides as the anniversary of Christ's birth emerges as the excruciation of Humpa-Taddum. For 2 millennia the earth has been under the dominion of the dyadic squirming word, the logos of John's Gospel, but recycled, and thus far older. Impenetrability, that's what I say. He or they strategically occupy both sides at once, according to a criterion of impenetrability, positioned to choose either in every case, but never apprehending what lies in between. Humpa-Taddum, whilst definitely not a Dogon egg, is a scrambled version of the demon Pabakis, poached from Lemurian time sorcery. Master of words, but not of numbers. Must a name mean something? Asked Alice doubtfully. Although Y2K is sheer semiotic event, it is not textual, ideological, representational, intentional, or phenomenological. Y2K, Teotwavki, C1, OK plus 100. mix dates and acronyms in criterial semiotic clusters that are not signifiers or arbitrary signs, because what they say is no different from the way they are built. They can mean whatever Humpa-Taddum chooses, but none of that matters. Beyond the domain of the fuzz god lies the non-signifying chatter of unconscious numeric pandemonium, where names are crypto-modules, meaningless packets of effective information, imminently productive machine jargons. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty in his place again. It all comes unstuck at the end. Y2K closes down the age of the fuzz god, however the Gregorian ocumenon responds. Not even martial law can stop that. The AOE focuses upon a single problem, acknowledging no other: how to reproduce magical power across discontinuity. As Humpa-Taddum gets smashed on New Year's Eve, substitute powers await their chance and their destiny, sober, patient, totally ruthless. "The question is," said Humpty Dumpty, "which is to be master? That's all."